Hello, Dave.
Hello, Matt. Okay, my suggestions when you asked me for suggestions on music for your video, I suggested either the William Tell Overture or Beethoven's Fifth, and juiced up a little bit so that they're going just a little bit too fast. And your decision was?
I don't have the William Tell Overture, and I think I have Beethoven's Fifth, but when I was looking, I did it with what I originally was going to do, and then I tried to play it for Janice, but I had set it up so that it's the facts you sent me about the cards, and then the cards. So the music doesn't start till about, there's like a 30-second gap where there's no sound, and the kid was having trouble with, I can't hear anything, and then it got really loud. And so I made a second version, and I was going through all the music I have, that's just loaded up on my computer, and I found it's the soundtrack to Buckaroo Banzai Adventures Across the Eighth Dimension. So the track I have is the end credit music, but before that it has the opening music, which is very electronic, John Williams inspired. And I went, oh, that would work, and I grabbed that and I hit play, and the first 8 seconds is just this. So I put that on a loop for 56 seconds, so it's got the facts, it's got all 75 cards, and then when it gets to One More Sleep, it cuts to one of your three covers, and then a 10-second clip of the Ninja Rap by Vanilla Ice from the second movie's soundtrack, where he's saying, "Go Ninja, go Ninja, go," over and over for 10 seconds. And then that's the end of it. It's only 1 minute and 6 seconds. And when I put it up on YouTube, they do copyright checks. If you use copyrighted music, it'll like when I did the Kurtz versus Kurtz video with a version of The End by The Doors, it flagged going, that property of The Doors, you can't use it. You can publish it privately, but it won't be available. You can't just share it won't show up on YouTube. So like if I send someone the link, they can watch the video, but they can't, you can't just search for it on YouTube. Well, the copyright check for this one said, you have 10 seconds of Vanilla Ice, but it's okay, this artist allows samples. And I'm thinking, well, he goddamn better. He made his career off of sampling Queen.
Yes. If you live in a glass house, you really shouldn't spend your livelihood throwing stones.
And that's, so it was there. It shows up as there's a red flag of there's a copyright violation, but it's okay. We're gonna let you publish the video. And I'm like, all right, let's. And then the other thing with this particular video, I always just hit publish and it goes up, and anyone that subscribes immediately gets a notification that I have a new video. This time they have a thing where you can schedule a premiere, and I'm like, all right. And it's like, how much of a countdown do you want? And the maximum was 5 minutes. And I'm like, well, 5 minutes. And then it's like, and when do you want to schedule it? And I'm like, well, the Kickstarter goes live at 10 o'clock tomorrow, so the video goes live at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And then I shared, I just as a test, I shared the link. And when you click on it, it goes, this video will be live in 13 hours. And I'm like, oh, okay, this will be fun. And then I shared it to this Cerebus Facebook group. And I'm wondering how many Please Hold regulars were watching 13 hours of videos coming, videos coming.
Oh, we hope not too many.
But, I'm hoping none, but I got a feeling.
Yeah, I don't know. There could be a few people out there that had a little inset screen just to keep track in case it goes. Only kidding, it's coming up in 5 minutes.
I mean, I'm not naming names or pointing fingers because these are all our listeners and we love them dearly.
Yes, yes. Okay, that answers my question. So now, first up is a can of worms. Boy, you got that right. That comes our way from the Cerebus Faceybookee group. Darrell Cook posted, and I'm going to say, Darrell, that the structure on this is very difficult. I was going to go, well, okay, Darrell should get his uninterrupted say on what it is that he's saying before, and then we got the, as you say, tip of the shiny metal helmet to Jeff Dundas for finding and quoting what I had to say on the subject, and then followed by Darrell's follow-up on what it is that he's talking about. It seems to me that the fairest way on this is if you can post uninterrupted Darrell Cook. Here's what Darrell Cook posted, and then here's his follow-up after what Jeff Dundas posted, because this is already getting pretty long, even for Please Hold for Dave Sim, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it manageable. It's a can of worms. We don't need it to be a can of boa constrictors just for the sake of coherence. And we're sitting here talking to each other, and worms are bad enough. Boa constrictors, I think we're actively driving people away. So, Darrell, I apologize that this is as close as I can get to you getting your side of the thing out and me getting my side of the thing out. So here's Darrell's direct quote, what he posted. Lord Julius is a child molester. That he raped Jaka as a child is never explicitly stated, but very clear through the subtle force of Sim's intimations. And what I, looking at that, I went, okay, first of all, I circled raped, because I think there's you have to get down to technical qualities when you're saying something like that about the scene in question. It could the compelled inference of the visual metaphor suggests sexual interference, which is a very specific term relative to child molestation, possibly invitation to sexual touching, which is another technical term. And the courts and the law have, definitely, because this is a centerpiece of Western jurisprudence, the specific terms mean specific things. The upshot of which is visual metaphor doesn't suggest penetration, which I think is implied by the term rape. So that was, I appreciate the subtle force, because that's definitely what I was doing there was, I want this to be a very forceful double-page image, and I want it to also be subtle, so that even when you get, okay, I think I know what we're looking at here, it's still forceful and still subtle. Then referring to Lord Julius, Darrell writes, he's also consistently hilarious. Sim's genius, and I'll interrupt to thank you for the description of whatever it is as genius, is modeled roughly directly after what Nabokov achieved in Lalita with Humbert. And I'm pronouncing it that way because I still remember Vladimir Nabokov's Playboy interview where he specified that he prefers the European pronunciation, which is Lalita as opposed to Lolita. It goes something like this. Most moral theory has it that moral demands are relatively relaxed. For example, right now there are starving kids in Africa. It's likely that you could well afford a $50 donation. Instead, you buy some Cerebus memorabilia. Except for some variant of strenuous utilitarianism, almost all moral theory would say, while it might be praiseworthy to donate, it's not obligatory, such that buying the Cerebus memorabilia is wrong. I wrote next to that, arguably, relaxed moral demands don't qualify as genuine moral theory, but instead as moral relativism. Quote, most, unquote. When you use most as a descriptor of moral theory, you're possibly looking at a less moral spectrum than what's available to you. And I would suggest that that was definitely the category that Nabokov was in terms of, okay, you're going to say that Humbert is wrong with his pursuit of Lalita, but there are starving kids in Africa. You have $50 that you could donate. You didn't do that. They're both wrong, but those kinds of moral demands are relatively relaxed. It's like I'm not sure that that's accurate. I mean, the color card metaphysics here is interesting because Mike M.J. Soule later on talks about buying Cerebus memorabilia, and I qualified that because he's apologizing that he keeps making the wrong decision. He's buying, spending all of his money for Cerebus stuff online instead of buying stuff from Dave Sim. If you buy something from Aardvark-Vanaheim or you buy something from Waverly Press, the share that Aardvark-Vanaheim gets, I do pay the zakah on it, the Muslim zakah. The fifth part belongs to God and the Apostle. So however much money you're giving to me, a 20% of that goes to the food bank of Waterloo region. So there you have what I would say is an available moral spectrum that exceeds what at least Nabokov was talking about. It's where the money ends up has a lot to do with, okay, this is what you decided to do. So if you gave directly, let's say, $1,000 to Dave Sim as opposed to $1,000 to Aardvark-Vanaheim, or $1,000 to Aardvark-Vanaheim, $200 of that went to go to feed the poor. So at that point, we have a wider moral spectrum with, at one end, the destructive. If you're buying CGC-graded Cerebus copies on eBay, and the guy that it's going to is a crack junkie, let's say, and he's got a serious problem with crack, and he's hitting the vodka a little too hard, and apart from that, he gets the occasional prostitute. Well, okay, there you've got the destination of the money that you are giving to him for his Cerebus memorabilia. Not only is no part of it for 20% of it going to feed the poor, it's going to personal self-destruction on the guy's part. So you've got destructive versus neutral versus benign versus beneficent. And I would suggest that buying something from someone who pays the zakah is at the beneficent end, at least partly. Whatever problems that individual has and whatever addictions that person has and whatever bad decision making that they're making about what they do with their money, 20% of it is still going to feeding the poor. And then Darrell goes on, we have our own interests. We know evil exists, and in the pit of our stomachs, suspect it is ineradicable. We laugh at Lord Julius, funny guy. Lord Julius is a child molester. Wait, suddenly he's not the silly, funny man anymore. Okay, I've got a thought on that, which is why I read all the way to that part. I also circled ineradicable as we suspect that evil is ineradicable. I would suggest it's eradicable within yourself. Everybody knows their own evils or suspects their own evils. At any time you can eradicate. If you are the guy selling Cerebus memorabilia who's got a crack cocaine habit, you can stop doing the crack. You have free will. It's going to be very, very difficult. You can go and get help from mental services, but it's still going to be you that has to eradicate the evil within yourself. Eradicating evil in others, to me, is morally perilous. How are you certain that what you're seeing in someone else is evil? And to what lengths are you willing to go to eradicate it? I mean, you can make that, you can try and make a Second Amendment case for that and say, well, this neighbor of mine is just completely evil in my view, so all I can do is shoot him. It's really the best good that I can do. No, it's always stick to what's on your own plate. You make your own free will choices about yourself without interfering with other people's free will choices. And that was what I wrote next to shun evil personally, and then annotated that with shun inferred evil personally. What you think is evil in yourself is possibly not evil, or not evil in the way that you sense that it is. So just accept the fact that you're a human being, you're flawed, and what you infer to be your own evil that you're keeping hidden from everybody else, it could be or it could not be. That's where Judgment Day comes in, where, okay, you will find out at some point, because nothing is hidden from God. Suddenly he's not the silly, funny man anymore. I wrote Bill Cosby next to that one, because that's certainly the most profound experience of that. Wait, suddenly he's not the silly, funny man anymore. Well, he still is. I mean, Bill Cosby. I had all of his records back in the 1960s when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. To Russell, the brother with whom I slept. Why is there hair? All of that stuff. Fat Albert. All of the things that we can't do and say anymore. And Fat Albert would be, fat shaming would be right at the top of that list. But I will never forget, and no one who is a Bill Cosby fan will ever forget, first hearing Fat Albert done by Bill Cosby as stand-up before before the animated cartoon, when your imagination could make a Fat Albert that just put the cartoon Fat Albert to shame. But that having been said, when we discovered that Bill Cosby had decided that drugging women and having sex with them when they're unconscious was a sensible option, or whatever it is that was going on in his head that said, this is what I'm going to do, because the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. It's okay. Well, I'm laughing at someone who thought and did think and possibly still thinks that was a sensible option. I'm probably one of the richest black men in America, and this is how I am going to get my sexual gratification. That's one of those, we could talk about that forever, but you're never going to get me to agree to disagree on that. It's like, no, that's just completely unconscionable, way over the line. And, but, at that point you go, well, okay, we have to burn all of his record albums. We have to, make sure that the Cosby Show is never seen. A lot of people worked on the Cosby Show. There was, a lot of good performers on that show. Felice Rachat, you just say, okay, we can never see her performances. We can never see these scripts again because Bill Cosby just overrides the whole thing. And like a detective, you piece together hints at insidiousness that Sim injected from the beginning. We didn't see them, too busy laughing. And that's the point, honest to goodness. The entire message of Cerebus is finally its own self-effacement and the great irony. And then followed by a colon. Would Sim himself rather someone A, buy Cerebus phone books, read them, or B, make a meaningful impact in the life of someone struggling to stay above water? Lord Julius, funny guy. And I think his A and B I would probably break up into A, B, and C. Would Sim himself rather someone A, buy Cerebus phone books, B, read them, or C, make a meaningful impact in the life of someone struggling to stay above water? Certainly my preference is that people would buy Cerebus phone books. Whether they read them or not, that's not really germane to me. I'm in the business of selling Cerebus phone books. A and B are two different things in the internet age. Menachem Lukens, who Escape Pod Comics, frankly admitted to me when he was first corresponding with me that he had downloaded illegal copies of the Cerebus phone books because he didn't have money for Cerebus phone books, but he wanted to read Cerebus. And it's like, well, okay, that's your decision. I can't stop illegal downloads from happening. I hope you enjoy them. And of course, Menachem eventually got to the point where he bought all the phone books and now sells the phone books. So there you go. There's a moral destination to these things where, to whatever extent, I would be the arbiter of whether Menachem has anything to atone for in his choice to buy illegal downloads. I'm fine by that. He is now, the retailer that actively makes Cerebus phone books available to anyone who wants to buy them. You can buy them at Escape Pod Comics, and he will send you the books wherever you are. And that's an irreplaceable benefit that Aardvark-Vanaheim and Dave Sim have that wouldn't have been there if I had, I think, either shunned or had a profoundly highly negative reaction to Menachem Lucan's illegally downloading the Cerebus phone book. And yes, another tip of the shiny metal helmet to Jeff Dundas for finding and quoting what I had said about the Lord Julius as molesting Jaka. I should probably have made clearer in my earlier answer that Jaka was indeed molested as an infant, but that the recollection was very deeply buried, only coming out in fever dreams, as an example. That is, by having conveyed that information, there is a part of Jaka you know more about than she does, which is a unique quality both to graphic novels and to literature in general, where you can know, that depending on what the author is doing, you can know more about the character than the character knows about the character. It would actually be unlikely that Lord Julius would be the culprit. In the context of absolute political power, there just wouldn't be any occasions when the Grand Lord of Palnu would be left alone with his infant niece. What would even be the pretext? Of course, at the Caesarean level, you don't need a pretext, but it would be extremely unlikely for an Augustus, although I grant you it would be less unlikely for a Nero or a Caligula. And we can add to that list, we know now, Chairman Mao, Fidel Castro, the whole first you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women kind of thing. It's like, bad way to look at it, but definitely a way to look at it. Darrell then rejoined another clue hinting at Lord Julius as child molester of Jaka. The first time I read it, Julius's comment only kicked up the most vaguely intuitive embers, but I didn't think too much. Going back and revisiting the context, it's clear that the initial sense of disquiet was onto something. The incident, in quotation marks, poor Jaka thought it was her birthday they were celebrating, only to discover that it was for Astoria. Leading up to this moment, there's an intense sense of foreboding, the rushed preparation, Jaka's awkward sense of coming to grips with her physicality, a, quote, picture of womanhood, unquote. And he puts in brackets, at 12, with a question mark. She repeats to herself, I'm a pretty girl, Mama. All such that when the imageric reveal is made, it has something of the revelatory curtain being pulled back. Annotating that, the line, I'm a pretty girl, Mama, is from the play, the musical Gypsy, which is a watershed moment where Natalie Wood, let's go by the movie version, Natalie Wood is transformed in that moment. Her mother wants her to strip in the burlesque house because she wants to go out as star. They're at the end of their rope, but here's the opportunity for them to go out as star. Rose Louise Kovic is going to become Gypsy Rose Lee. And she just sort of automatically does what her mother is telling her to do and puts on a very slinky black dress and does her hair up and, does some makeup tricks and astonishes herself when she looks in the mirror and says, I'm a pretty girl, Mom. And she's not much older than Jaka. We don't really know how old she is in the movie's context. We know that she's at least a teenager. So the extreme of that is the sexualizing of pre-adolescent girls. Think JonBenet Ramsey. At what age is makeup appropriate is the question. And we don't really address that as a society because there's a whole faction that just goes, well, it's just makeup. It's like Halloween. They want to put makeup on and, clomp around in their mother's heels. What's the harm? At what age is makeup appropriate? That was more of a question for decades and for centuries. 15, 16, 17, 18. I would say it presupposes that makeup is appropriate. You don't actually look the way makeup makes you look. So consequently, I don't think that makeup is a good thing, particularly for a gender that prides themselves on authenticity. You have to be authentically who you are. Well, why are you wearing makeup then? You don't look like that. Which brings us back again to Gypsy with the vaudeville versus burlesque. Burlesque was considered a lot more vulgar than vaudeville, but they were both essentially the same thing. People on stage pretending to be people that they're not, and making their living that way. It's like, well, there's at least an inauthenticity to that it is. We do a disservice to ourselves by not confronting that head on. That anytime you're professionally pretending to be someone that you aren't, I think you're getting into problematic moral areas. But that doesn't mean that I want Madonna banned. But it does mean that don't try and make me celebrate Madonna and celebrate her relationship in quotation marks with the Catholic Church. If you want to celebrate that, that's fine. That's your free will choice. But don't try and force other people into making those moral choices and holding those moral opinions. Several of the men clearly gazed upon the child with sexual desire. The two women seemed so familiar with the abuse associated with aristocratic mobility that their smiles betray themselves as if somewhere deep down in certain rare introspective moments they know of their own brokenness. And finally, Lord Julius, quote, doesn't look a day over 12, does she, unquote, referencing Historia. But that's Jaka. When you place the comment in the totality of its context, Jaka's nightmares with phallic beings, the events leading up to this moment, it's clear there's a deeply sickening sexual innuendo. Yes, very, very astutely put. I would say on that one, and that's one of the, going back to again the subtle force of Sim's intimations. I always see that going on in society. I mean, you don't have to be in an aristocratic context. You don't have to be a member of the British royal family to not know that there is a strong current in society of turning a blind eye to things like this because your status depends on turning a blind eye to it. The universities are getting into serious trouble now with, this is supposed to be a bastion of open discussion and the exchange of viewpoints. And everyone's turning a blind eye to the fact that, okay, we are agreeing for the sake of tenure and agreeing for the sake of maintaining our status at the university that someone else has the right to force moral opinions and moral decision-making on it. We are children of the civil rights movement, and this is the natural logic of the next step. It's like, no, that's as insidious as deeply sickening sexual innuendo. Darrell goes on, Astoria knew Julius had molested Jaka. Well, I underlined that and wrote, that's speculative as well. I'm reminded of the Jeff Jones female character in his Idol strip. Quote, there are some things I don't even tell myself, unquote. And we don't reckon with that as a society, that there are people who have that aptitude of, there are some things I don't even tell myself, and consequently, I scrupulously don't know them. And unfortunately, those are the people who are controlling our society right now, are the people who go, well, I'm not going to tell myself that I am joining the totalitarians and the authoritarians and censors, and if I don't tell myself that, then that means that I'm not doing that. Those are the dangerous people. So again, that's speculative as well. Darrell goes on to say about Astoria, she's no dummy, which makes her marriage even more insidious. The conscience is blunted. The unacceptable becomes acceptable in the drive for power. Like I say, that's pretty much across the whole spectrum of our society right now, depending on whether you're a First Amendment absolutist or a First Amendment pragmatist. Those people are quite happy to get rid of freedom of expression for anybody, not only in the drive for power, but in terms of material success, in terms of social acceptance of being in with the in crowd. At that point, you wrote, somebody asked you if you had confirmed any of that, and I said, so please hold, I guess. Can I have 1 month where the next month's questions don't start the week after? And then you write, since there's a lot to unpack from all of this, let me break it down as best I can. And you wrote, what's better, ambiguity or certainty? And I wrote next to that one, inference isn't implication. And then amended that to, inference isn't necessarily implication. To which I would add, inference isn't not necessarily implication. So is that ambiguity or certainty? To me, all of those taken together triangulate a barrier, a barricade, a balustrade for freedom of expression that has certainty to it, but is certainly completely informed by ambiguity, because the one without the other doesn't exist. And then number 2, you wrote, if you give a concrete answer this time, what's to stop us from having to cover this again in a year or two? And it's like, well, again, everybody has their different opinions. They can try and persuade other people. You don't have to wait a year or two. You can do it tomorrow. You can do it 5 minutes from now. You can do it a week from now. Let's go around the circle again, and you're still going to end up at we'll just have to agree to disagree. And I wrote next to that point of yours, my answers are as concrete as I can make them, which, when it comes to the sex lives of my characters, is, quote, not very, unquote. Then you put 3, did Julius molest Jaka? It fits the known facts in the fiction that I wrote, but so do any number of other scenarios. It's one of the centerpieces of my own thinking when I'm doing the Monday reports and commenting on John's Gospel, I'm basically saying the conventional Christian interpretations of John's Gospel, there are just way too many loose ends. I read what's there. Here's as close as we can get to the original Greek. Here's what I understand about the Torah, and here's how, for me, these jigsaw puzzle pieces fit together. It fits the known facts. I assume that there are other scenarios that, someone would say, okay, here's the conventional Christian interpretation of John's Gospel. Here's what Dave has to say about it when I'm finally done commenting a page at a time, 15 years from now or whatever. And, possibly synthesizing those and going, okay, understood, we have to accept what Dave is saying, that what our interpretation has to fit what the text is saying, which we haven't been doing up till now. So here's another take on it. I don't think Dave Sims' YHWH theories hold water, and here's why I don't think they hold water, and here's why they all everything that's in John's Gospel fits the known facts of my theory in the same way that Dave Sim does. Number 4, you wrote, as the author, do you even know? Or is it like Siren and Poe's genitalia? You never turned your imagination to it. I wrote next to that, in the same sense that my imagination doesn't stray, and I put a box around stray, to the sex lives of my female neighbors or my ex-wife or ex-girlfriends. All I know and ever can know is what they look like and what they say. Turning your imagination to something is different from how I see my imagination. I limit my imagination from straying to things like that. Whereas we live in a society where everyone is actively turning their imagination to what should be individual, private things. It's I don't think that sexual preferences are genders. I think that's what happens when, as a society, you make those decisions. It not only letting your imagination stray to that, but actively turning your imagination to it. It's okay. Well, gender is going to go out the window, and you're going to try and replace it with sexual preferences, and it's like that's more titillating, but it's far more inaccurate. I think 5 and 6 of your points, I would argue that they're in reverse order. I think we can all assume that Astoria isn't Lord Silverspoon's mother. So how many wives did Lord Julius have? And then followed by 5, was Julius Jaka's father's brother or Jaka's mother's brother or Jaka's father, and due to palace intrigue was raised as his niece? And I wrote next to that, and when did they become his ex-wives? How many children did he have? And what was that context of when he was married and when he became unmarried? And I'm doing the point. The central point to me becomes that I was doing Groucho Marx. Lord Julius is Groucho Marx, but the Groucho Marx character, which raises the question, which is valid. Your 5 and 6 are okay. We've gotten all the way here with Jaka as Lord Julius's niece, and Lord Julius is Lord Julius, the Grand Lord of Powdale. To how many children was Groucho Marx Uncle Julius? I'm a big Marx Brothers fan. I wouldn't know that offhand. Julius isn't really the larger point of Groucho Marx. And that's a personal inference on my part. The larger point of Groucho Marx is the Groucho Marx character created by S.J. Perlman and others, and particularly in the early Broadway plays and the early movies. You can even get stucco. Oh, how you can get stucco. It's either foggy outside or make that 5 more hard-boiled eggs. There's my argument. Restrict immigration. Doesn't look a day over 12, does she? Is a good Groucho punchline, which supersedes all other considerations with a Groucho-based character. And that flies in the face of our society and is a helium versus hydrogen thing. Women want to know, okay, yes, how many ex-wives did he have? How many children did he have? You're defined by whatever is procreatively in orbit around you. And it's like, oh, that's not Groucho Marx to me. Groucho Marx to me is, you can even get stucco. Oh, how you can get stucco. That person, that character, that written character, which is not only written, but is who Groucho became. You know, Julius Marx became Groucho Marx and portrayed himself that way, which was a real nutcracker existence. You meet Groucho Marx and you expect him to talk like Rufus T. Firefly. But most people don't come up with stuff like that just off the top of their head. It's impossible. That's crafted comedy. And that's what's interesting to me, and I think that's what's interesting to most guys about Groucho Marx. I don't care whose Uncle Julius he was. I don't care who his ex-wives were. I know he married one of his secretaries, and I know that he was living with Aaron, what's his name, at the end. But those are irrelevant people compared to the importance of Groucho Marx to me. So there you go, Darrell. Thank you for a very, very lucid series of observations. It's definitely gratifying as an author that, like, I wrote, most of what you're talking about almost 40 years ago now, and you're still talking about it in a very, very immediate sense that this is important. So thank you for doing that. I hope you don't take offense at anything that I said, or that I essentially answered what you had to say by interrupting you continuously.
Well, so Darrell's been posted on the Facebook group as he's doing a reread, and he finally did a post where he's essentially working on a book about the series at this point, because he as he says, he's got nothing better to do with his free time, and it's a lot of his posts. I mean, they're very jagged as far as you just can't pick them up and hold them. You know, it's a wet cat with claws. Of you can try, but you're gonna get hurt. Like he's like, this particular post was when he did the first one, and it's like, well, this is something we've talked about in the past as fans, and and we back during the Yahoo group we would ask the questions, and of course that's the multi-part. Hey Dave, we get 5 questions. Here's question 1. There's 14 question marks in it.
Right.
I mean, that's what you can. If anyone goes back and looks at the Yahoo group, you'll know when I joined, because that's where we started getting questions where there was a 3-paragraph preamble to a basic question, explaining this is what we're driving at, this is what we see, are we right? As opposed to the Lenny questions, which were written by a lawyer, so it's, the party of the first part.
Right.
And I I have all those questions, and every time I go back and look at the early ones before I joined the group, I'm like, I'm surprised Dave kept doing this. At a certain point, I would have said, no, I just don't want to do this anymore.
Well, no, that's part and parcel of me devoting 26 years of my life to it. And, thinking about it constantly. So it's like, okay, this is this book that I'm working on right now, but, there's implications of this book that I'm going to have to address up ahead. 6,000 pages, you should have, you can have loose ends, but there are some loose ends that you just can't leave loose. You better tie it off, at least in terms of your own perception of it. A lot of authors talk about that. The good writing has an iceberg effect to it. There's 9/10 of the thinking isn't actually in the book. It's just the 1/10 that's distilled. So it is very gratifying that so much of the audience, the core audience, the yahoos and the people who listen to Please Hold for Dave Sims, it's okay. That's what you're responding to, is somebody putting that much of his personal mental candle power into his work. And okay, we've all, as Cerebus fans, we've all dealt with the top 10%. We've gone down 10% further than that. It sounds like Darrell's the first, possibly the first deep sea Cerebus reader diver going, no, I'm going to get all the way to the bottom of this. And it's like, it's going to retreat away from you the more you try to catch up to it. And it's, I will do my part, at least in terms of, 2 or 3 hours once a month. Hey, these people are this interested. And as an author, that supersedes, did you buy these books from me, or did you get them on eBay because somebody had given up, or you were just watching for bargains? It's like, don't make that your criteria. It's God will make sure that enough people buy Cerebus that, or whatever other work that I'm doing, that I'm keeping my head above water. I'm not J.K. Rowling in terms of income and audience, but I'll opt for what I got.
So the second post that Darrell did, where he posted the Happy Birthday Astoria 2-page spread, with Jaka in the doorway, and I got my copy of the remastered Jaka story next to me, and I'm looking at that page, and it just dawned on me, this is one of those, okay, if everyone's paying attention, you'll catch up, you'll see this, and I never noticed before, but when you first introduced Julius, and you've talked about this in various times, is that when you were imagining Palnu, it was essentially the same as a mesh, and you had to come up with a different absolute dictator leader, and that's when you decided on Groucho. But one of the things that you had said, I forget where I even read it, but one of the things you said was that when you introduced Palnu, part of the idea here was everybody dresses the same because it's the style of whatever the Grand Lord's wearing, that's what everybody else is going to wear. And so in this 2-page spread, everybody's wearing Julius's outfit, which is the same outfit he was wearing in the Silver Spoon strips when he first showed up. And I'm like, that's a commitment. I mean, this is how many hundreds of pages later, and you're still sticking your guns with, okay, no, this is the original Julius, not the Groucho without glasses.
Right.
I mean,
and the other element is Jaka is the only one who isn't dressed that way, and it's like, what does that say? Well, and it's go ahead.
The two women that Darrell mentions are both wearing dresses, but they're not as fancy of dresses, but they're still fancier than all the guys that are wearing the same burlap outfits.
Right, and it's that's a commentary as well on how far would Groucho Marx, as absolute dictator, go for a gag. And, well, there you go. It's whatever it costs to get Jaka all dolled up in exactly that way was like couch change to him, but was probably, the revenue of the average worker in Paunu over the course of a year. And hurry up offense. It's like, you're going to do this, and you're going to do it by 3 o'clock tomorrow, because that's when I'm springing the gag. And it's like, yeah, that's a good reason you wouldn't want to have Groucho Marx as dictator. It's like, it's a gag to you, but you've just transformed your niece's life, and not in a positive way. With the what's the noun form? Precociousness. You're enforcing a sexual precociousness on Jaka as a 12-year-old that resonates in a profound way on the female side, where they're looking at the 12-year-old and looking at her as a woman, because only women could afford dresses like that and could get all dolled up like that. It's Darrell definitely called it with a picture of womanhood at 12. It's like, yeah, you can do that. Look at Hollywood. Look at stars' daughters who, okay, when does a movie star's daughter get to wear makeup? Jamie Lee Curtis. When was she first wearing makeup? When was she first wearing designer clothing? And how unhealthy is that? And I would say, really, really unhealthy. Okay, I got to go and do my final prayer, and we'll be back with MJ Sewell's question.
Okay.
Back in a few minutes. Bye-bye.